it actually, hi there, where it actually goes to the actual halachas. Still now we're talking about eitzes, stories. Now it goes to the actual halachas of Noah's Dvar. So we're going to go one by one. I think Mincha is at 8:10, so we have about 14 minutes. Okay. So first of all, he mentions that it's a leis aseh. It's a leis in the Torah, just like you're not allowed to eat a pig, you're not allowed to eat nevela, unslaughtered meat. You're not allowed to speak on Noah's Dvar. You don't get malchus for it because it's interesting. You don't get punished unless it's considered an action. It's a loises Hashem b'malchus. Words are not considered an action. Interesting. The Isra of Noah's Dvarim is not only directly, even beremes, alluding to. Sometimes alluding to it can make it more painful because you're being facetious, and sometimes that can even be more hurtful. Some people would prefer if you spoke to them directly, not through innuendo and intimation. So it says the issue of Noah's Dvarim is not only with one's mouth, but also with writing. Of course, one needs to be extra careful in writing something, like a complaint to a business, a text or an email, since the HR is much stronger then, because you're upset, compared to when speaking in person, because you sort of feel like you can be a mighty warrior on your little screen, and most people have two different personalities. The meek personality they are when you meet them, but then the mighty warriors they are from the battlefield of the keyboard. You can have you're standing behind the armor of they don't really see who you are. They think you're a 300-pound elephant. But at any rate, so that's sometimes writing can be more caustic, and then you would normally be able to say words. If you're in front of someone, you have some shyness, but when you say it in writing, you can sometimes be more painful than if you say it in writing, verbally. The general rule is that normally when you don't intend to do something, you're exempt. But he says here that Noah's Dvarim, it's not true, because the prohibition of Noah's Dvarim is the hurt that you inflict on someone. As you said earlier from Chaim Shulevitz, it's the outcome. If he gets hurt from your words, then you committed an issur. One who repeats a comment, that's obviously, we know someone you tell over to something to someone that someone else said about him, that's one of the worst averos is rechilus. And in addition to doing that, obviously, you're also transgressing the prohibition of leisenu. Now he says the issur of Noah's Dvarim is of course to a fellow yid. This is true even if the person is not intelligent. Whatever it is, it makes no difference what level of intelligence the person is, or in your mind out of it. And nevertheless, the issur applies. It is true that if he is your Rabbi, that it is true if he, and certainly if he's, of course, I don't know what he means. It is true if he is your Rabbi or just. You're even an English teacher. No, that's what he meant. He's talking to kids. He said they should realize that even for an English teacher is also, I think I skipped maybe something. Hold on a second. Did I skip a page? Just got to make sure I'm going straight here. No, that's good. Okay, then he says here, he takes, this is really something. He makes a comment here about, unfortunately, kids. I'm not sure how many kids are listening to this, or the kids that we raised, but sometimes we take a certain license. Kids say things in front of teachers, especially secular studies teachers. He brings here a terrible story from Rav Zev Smith, his famous speaker and teacher and Talmud. He said 35 years ago, there was a couple from Toronto, Bali Tshuva, who lived in an apartment in this Rav Zev Smith's parents' home, in the same house where he grew up. They were very careful to do each and every mitzvah properly. They made this FFB family feel a little more attentive to what they had to do. He said he worked in Macy's and she was a teacher in public school. And then because she wanted to, enter into the frum community and be accepted, so she started teaching in a Hamish girls' school. And then he writes the following: they would come over to my parents' house on Shabbos for the Suda. One time I sensed that something's not right. They stopped coming to eat in that Suda on Shabbos. He stopped coming to shul to daven. One day we discovered they had totally abandoned Yiddishkeit. My mother was shocked. Later, this former returnee to Tshuva, to Baal Tshuva, told my mother what turned off. She gave up a lot in order to become frum. She used to make 3 times the amount of money teaching at public schools than teaching at the Hamish girls' school. At school, the kids would make trouble and do tricks and all kinds of shtick, which gave her much aggravation. At one point, she said to herself, if this is what Judaism is about, I'm not interested. And she abandoned Yiddishkeit. These girls cause a couple with a child, that a child to stop keeping Torah mitzvahs. Even if these girls will do tshuva, even if they will do vidui, the chil Hashem that they did is hard to atone for. Anyway, terrible story. And you never know the repercussions of what children do. I mean, obviously they were children, but it seems like they were already over bas mitzvah. But just, and unfortunately, we know too many stories, especially those of us who have been in chinuch and realize I still remember when I was in high school, how we tortured teachers and made fun of them. And who knows? You never know. And hopefully we learn our lesson. He says, there are many stories, he doesn't bring it, where entire classes have had, stories in different schools where many girls couldn't find shidduchim, and they went back to an episode with a fellow classmate that they abused, or a teacher that they needed to get mechila from. And the Isser is all year long, and he just emphasized even Purim doesn't give one permission to abuse someone verbally. The Isser applies even in innocent grammar at a Sheva Brachos on Purim. One has to be extra careful when making fun of a Talmid Chacham. He says, the Gemara says that Yerushalayim was destroyed because one of the Gemara says Yerushalayim, because they were disgraced Talmid Chacham. The Gemara says that someone who's Mevaz Talmid Chacham has no chelik on haba. The Gemara says that someone who's Mevaz Talmid Chacham may get a sickness that has no cure. Oh, sounds familiar. If this is done in front of them, then one is embarrassing them in public, and that's you lose your chelik on haba when you Mevaz anyone, certainly a Talmid Chacham. One should not pain a child. This is a very important halacha. And when you pain a child, you're over on the Issa Deraisa. The child who does it is not doesn't transgress a Torah law. But if the victim is a child, and the problem is they can't be meichel you either. There's no mechila because they don't have the right to be meichel you. Some hold that there's no Isra v'nos Dvarim to someone who does not fear God. Yeah, but that's we assume that everyone today cannot be accused of not being fear of God, because the only way you can accuse someone of not being observant enough to be deserving of privileges of being a Yid is if you're able to reproach him and he doesn't listen. But the Gemara says today we don't know how to reproach. And the famous Chazon Ish says there's really no one today that you can really label a real heretic or a real Machal Shabbos, because the criteria before labeling someone in Russia that's excluded from some of these halachas, like in the case of Enos Dvarim, is only after you've gone through the motions of reproaching him, and reproach is an art. It's a delicate art, and the Gemara says that we don't know how to be mechir. So basically, everyone is assumed to be in the category. And even though it says leisanu ishes amisecha, and amisecha means the nation that is with you in mitzvahs, it's a contraction. Am she'itcha, the term mitzvahs, but most people today we don't fault them if they were tinakim shenishba and they didn't know better and no one reproached them. And another important halacha, very important halacha, one has to be very careful not to paint a ger tzedek. There's actually 2 separate lois essays in addition to the regular one, to address not only the regular loisay of loisainu applies to a ger, but there's 2 specific ones of ger loisainu v'chiyagritcha ger b'yatzchem loisainu loisay. One must be careful not to paint. Okay, this is a tough one. It's interesting. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. It says here, one must be careful not to pain one's wife. Doesn't say in the next paragraph you're not allowed to pain your husband, because women never pain us. We deserve it. But there's only one woman on the I don't know, maybe the brands are listening also, maybe they're listening as a couple, I don't know, maybe the Mets are also. At any rate it says here one must be careful not to pain one's wife, and it brings the Gemara says that women are more sensitive. I mean, I don't know if they take that or not, but that's what the Gemara says. The reason one should be extra careful with her is that because of a natural sensitivity, softness, even the small tears can bring a woman to tears. Since Hashem rarely responds to tears, the punishments are more quickly to come, because Hashem, the shari, I know, the gateways and demise is always a provoker of Hashem's response to tefillah, and certainly when the gates of I know when someone causes someone pain. There is a machlokes if this special care is only with one's wife or any woman. Interesting. Okay, that needs further. Then he says the basic halacha is that this is a very interesting halacha. that many of us are guilty of over the life. And this fits into the general idea of Ainos Dvarim. Sometimes there's an overlap between Ainos Dvarim with causing painful words to someone, and sometimes Ainos Dvarim in the sense of deception. But like I said in the beginning, deception is also a type of a pain, because when you take someone for a fool, you're abusing the person, and that all fits into the same category of causing someone pain. So he says like this: the basic halacha is that a person may not ask a potential seller for the price at which that seller would be willing to sell a certain item if the person asking does not want to buy it. You're not allowed to extract information from a seller if you have no intention, and just bother him and make him think that you're interested when you're not interested at all. You're over on a lace essay. It says, by asking, he is arousing the hopes of the seller to make a sale. Then by not buying, he is disappointing the seller and is over on a lace essay of leisenu. Fascinating. If you have no intention whatsoever, just curious, maybe you want to make comparative shopping and things like that, you're not allowed to do that. You're taking the person, you're deceiving him in the sense of leisenu, which also means deceiving someone, cheating him. But you're taking him for a fool. You're abusing him in that way. However, if there is a chance that he may end up buying it from that seller, he may ask the price of an item. For example, one may ask from any source of the price in order to find the cheapest one. Of course, you could take a survey, and you're not bothering them. They're each interested in making the sale, since there's a possibility that he will end up buying from one of them. The question arises that in the seller's mind, both cases are identical. What's the difference? The seller may never know. The seller may never know whether you intended or not. Yet it's usher. Someone aroused his hopes to make a sale and then disappointed. Why should the first case be usher and the second one is mutter? In other words, in terms of the seller, there's no difference, because he doesn't know that you're interested, not interested. He knows there's a certain amount of people in the gym, and he accepts that as part of the routine of daily life, daily business. So why it should be that way? He says the answer may be, he suggests, that this appointment is expected since it is part of the normal process of selling. As such, it is mutter. But if it is not part of the normal process of selling, such as when the buyer has no intention to buy, in other words, you have no legitimate right to engage a person and use him and utilize him for your own interest when you're really goading him because he's not really interested. He's only doing it if there was a potential, if he would know that there's no potential. So in the end, he may not realize it, but you've manipulated him for no reason and wasted his time for no purpose. Normally, he accepts it, but in the end, you took his time and you caused him whatever to be distracted, whatever he could have been done differently. So the Torah prohibited causing the pain of this disappointment. The difference between the case in the buyer's mind is not the seller's. And this is why the Torah says, and this lace essay, it just says, Leisainu Ishus HaMisah, it says, V'yareisim Elikecha. What do you mean? Every mitzvah you have to yareis Elikecha. It says, because only Hashem knows what is in your mind. Are you taunting the guy? Are you teasing the guy? Are you playing him? And the mind of the buyer. If the buyer's intention is asking the price not to buy the seller, then you're over on it. So okay, so he gives, just go a little further, try to hop around another minute here. It says the following, he gives some example of someone wanting to find out the price of something, even though he has no intention of buying it. It says, when Mordechai got married, he received the chassan present from his cousin Nisan. Now Nisan is marrying off a son, and Mordechai would like to give that son a present which is worth at least as much as the present he received from Nisan. Mordechai may not ask the store for the price of the present that he received. The reason is that his interest is only to know how much to spend on the present for Nisan's son, and he's bothering the guy for no reason. But you could tell the guy up front, say, listen, I have no intention of buying. I'm just trying to do some comparative shopping, so I know how much the gift I got, so I can reciprocate. If you tell him you're up front, there's no issue. But if you make the guy think that you're asking for a purpose, and he says, Shimon wants to put his house for sale and wants to know what his asking price should be. He sees an ad that Reuven is also selling a similar house. So Shimon is thinking that in order to get an idea of how he should charge, he would call up Reuven and make believe that he's thinking of buying Reuven's house. To do so I know it's Dvarim. And another case, we'll conclude this, is with someone who's planning to buy something over the phone or online and wants to check out the item beforehand to see which model to buy. If he walks into a store and has the owner show him around, he is violating the prohibition in the store. Very often, remember, we've done this. I've done this many times. I mean, in my lifetime, you want to buy something, a piece of furniture, and you know someone who has a business, and you want to go see, what it is. So you go and check it out in the showrooms. We have no interest because you're going to order by your friend who sells it. So if you go to the showroom and you just scout around and they let you come in, I don't think there's any problem. But if you get a salesman to take you around, and you start asking questions, the dimension, and you have no interest at all, and that's awesome. Now the truth is, he said it's only technically by a yid, but as we know by Gzeil and all these essays, we say as a famous Beragel, it applies to even to non-Jews. Not only Chizuk Hashem, it's just a question of character and midas tayvos. The person should always act inappropriately his character, no matter who he's dealing with. Obviously, there's a higher level to a brother, to a sister, to a fellow Jew, but certainly to be a human being, a decent human being, it applies to everybody. Okay, and with that, I think they're waiting for me from Mincha. I bid you adieu and see you tomorrow.